My name is Wayne Fromm, and I'm the president of my own company, which is called FrommWorks Inc. And basically, I create products. I work on the development from the concept all the way through to manufacturing, and either distribute the products or license them out. I've been doing this for more than 30 years.
Can we jump right into some of the student questions? Is it okay if we jump right into the student questions, Wayne?
Oh, it's absolutely fine with me, sure.
So one of the kids want to know, can you explain to us about how you guys created the selfie stick? Like, how did it come from inception to production and out on the market?
I was traveling with my daughter. We generally travel quite often, and we were in Italy at the time. We were on the Ponte Vecchio, and I was looking for somewhere to stabilize. In those days, it was just a digital camera. It was before the smartphone. And I found, like a ledge of a bridge or a garbage receptacle, this sort of thing. But then you have to, even if you set yourself timer, you had to prevent pedestrians from walking between you and the camera. And at that point, I kept thinking there must be an easier way than this, because I didn't want to pass the camera to strangers. I mean, you try to look around and find somebody that hopefully won't run off with your camera or doesn't have suntan lotion on their hands or this sort of thing. So that's when I thought, well, if the camera could somehow be suspended and held by the person who owns the camera, that might be a good invention. So that was the inspiration for it. And then I started studying anything that was telescopic, something that could retract. So that led me to everything from umbrellas to years back, cars had antennas that would retract. They were motorized antennas, and pickup tools, magnetic pickup tools, anything that was telescopic. And it was a matter of creating prototypes from that, testing it out, and seeing what the end result was. That was basically it in a nutshell.
One of the kids wanted to know, could you tell us what is the process of getting patent when you have a really cool idea like the selfie stick? Can you kind of walk us through, like in a nutshell, what that process is like?
Yes. What I do is I study the marketplace in general. So first you do the most obvious things like your Google searches and actually going online to types of businesses that could possibly sell the product that you have in mind or the item. And then you do a search. You can go in the United States, it's uspto.gov. That's the government website. They've just updated the search as of September 30th. But you can search through all of the patents in their database. And it's a little complicated, but if you focus and learn how to do it, it's not all that difficult. And then you'll start to see what else has existed in the past. Is there anything identical, similar? And your idea has to be novel. An expert that looks at it has to be able to say, hey, that is unique, that's different, that's something that's not obvious. So that's really the litmus test for if something can receive a patent or not. And then if you start, I always start in the United States, and then you have a certain time period to apply in other countries, but it gives you a little bit of a head start to see whether or not it's marketable and if it's worth investing in the other countries, because you have ongoing expenses, you have renewal fees and translation fees and this sort of thing. So, you want to be pretty certain that you've got a good idea that's going to have a patent that will withstand attack in the future, because almost all patents get attacked at some point if you're trying to lay an infringement claim against someone else.
I'd imagine that the courts can get kind of gummed up with situations of people just trying to get a piece of that pie.
Yeah, absolutely. Absolutely. The first thing they try to do is what's called a declaratory judgment. They try to knock your patent out, but there's a presumption that a patent is valid if it's been issued. But it still happens all the time. And if you do some research and study some of the larger cases, Apple, Samsung, this sort of thing, you'll see how convoluted they are and how expensive they can be too.
What are some of the inventors that you look up to as someone who's been in this field for 3 decades?
Um, I've met many. I've met Dean Kamen. Uh, Dyson, James Dyson. Uh, Modern inventors are, to me, it's great. You take, people get the idea and the impression that everything's been thought of, but that's not the case. We see that, in music and movies and art. The same thing with patents. There's always new twists and turns and new technology. Uh, it's always a debate. What is an invention? What's an innovation? What's just marketable? I certainly love the cleverness of Tesla and Apple and whoever's behind all of that. I mean, it's not just one person quite often. Of course, we attribute everything to Steve Jobs on Apple. He had teams. He was definitely a creator, but he synthesized a lot of things. And I'm not in any way uh, suggesting that he wasn't a genius. He certainly was. Um, but he took a lot of things and made the smartphone out of MP3 players and calculators and flashlights, and he just threw everything like a Swiss Army knife. So it was brilliant in that respect.
One of the students wanted to know, can you by chance let us know how did you feel when you knew that your product was actually going to be financed and be like a huge success, like the way it was?
It was actually a long road to an overnight success. It was hardly that. It took almost 10 years. I launched it in 2006. And it wasn't until around 2016 or 2017 before it became a worldwide phenomenon. It was a lot of work, a lot of demonstrations, a lot of trade shows, a lot of travel. We had it at the airport in Beijing during the Olympics there, just Germany, the Photokina show. I mean, it was just, it was hard to get it to catch on. There was a factor at first that people thought it was very egotistical to have a device like that, and most people are more used to just holding their arm out and taking a picture, but they realized that whoever's holding the phone or the camera at that point, their head would be at a different proportion than the person beside them, because originally my concept was not for selfies per se. That word didn't even exist yet. It was for family photos, because generally the person that operated the camera, let's say it was one of the parents, quite often if you look at photographs, family photos from generations ago, the person who operated the camera was not in the picture. Most people did not carry tripods, and most cameras, other than in those days SLRs, those preceded DSLRs, they didn't even have easy to use self timer functions. So to have it adopted was an uphill battle. It was it crossed there were a lot of barriers along the way, but when it started to hit and we could see the inertia and the momentum, it was a great feeling. It's always great. I've also had a lot of products, toys that I've gone through toy stores in Hong Kong or London, England, or Barcelona, and I've seen my products. It's a fun feeling. It's great. It's a great feeling.
We have a question from Roxanne, and Roxanne, you should be able to unmute to ask. You had a pretty good question for Wayne. Go ahead and ask.
Hi.
Hi.
My question is, what studies have you done?
I think you elaborate on that. She wants to know kind of what studies do you do when you're setting out to invent something or innovate something.
I see. That's a good question. I read a lot. I research. I go through history. I go through old magazines. Even you can go on to some libraries keep archived publications, like used to be on microfilm, but now it's all digitized. You have to really know your stuff. You want to know absolutely everything that relates to your idea. I mean, let's say you have an idea for a new type of stapler. You want to go right back to whenever Swingline came out, whether it was the 1800s, I don't know, but you have to be an expert in the area of interest, and just you have to know absolutely everything. So it's a matter of studying, reading, reviewing, researching, Google search, and it's not just your country. You have to search all over the world for something to be novel. You have to know that it didn't exist in Japan or Korea or anywhere else ever before.
The research that you do on this stuff must be absolutely endless. I know that you and your daughter work together, and it's got to be endless amounts of research. Angelina, you had a very good question. Go ahead and unmute and ask.
Hello, I'm Angelina, and I just want to ask if you also had some like failures before the final design. So, and how did you deal with like also these kind of things when it didn't work out immediately?
Yeah, that's a great question. When I first worked on we'll call it a selfie stick now. When I first created it, I called it a handheld extendable monopod, because monopod means one and pod is foot. So it was a one-footed device. And I went to because I'm in the toy industry, at least I have a lot of history in the toy industry. I was in China and we were at the prototype shop, and I was explaining exactly what I wanted. I was showing the engineers there all the prototype that I created first, using parts available to me. And I have a little machine shop that I enjoy working on. And they basically were saying it's impossible, because I wanted it to be made out of polycarbonate. I wanted to make sure that it was going to be able to go through airport security, because it was going to be something that I knew travelers would use. And I thought that steel rods, especially back then in the early 2000s, it wasn't that long after 9/11, that was a critical concern of mine. So the very first ones that I was working on were made out of polycarbonate, which would be able to be used underwater as well, because in those days, some of the cameras like Pentax had underwater cameras. This was, preceded GoPro and things like that. So I had all of that in mind. And when they kept saying it was impossible, I kept saying, no, it's not impossible. We have to do it. We have to do it. And, they would present what they've created. I would look at it and say, no, we've got to make this change. It's perseverance. I mean, have I ever left a project? I have. I've abandoned ideas, not because they weren't possible to create, but because at some point I just felt the market wouldn't embrace it. So it's not just a matter of coming up with a good idea. It's a matter of getting it out to the market at the right price, timing. Do you have supply chain issues? I mean, there's so many factors. It's to be an inventor and an entrepreneur. It's like using parts of the brain that some people specialize in only one part of that. There are expert entrepreneurs, expert marketers, and there's expert inventors, and it's not many people do it all at once. So they might team up with somebody, might partner with somebody that specializes in one thing or another. But yeah, I've abandoned projects. I've had some that we brought out that didn't meet the expectations, because it's a moving target. Things change, people change, tastes change, colors change. It's a lot of factors, a lot of variables.
And we'll answer some pretty quick questions here. How many, if you could ballpark, how many prototypes did you have when you were coming out with an invention like the selfie stick?
I had about 140 of them.
What? Wow.
Mm-hmm.
That is a lot of sticks lying around your house.
Yeah. There was, and I would torture test them as well. You put them into the freezer. I would throw weights on them. I would have a truck run over them. And I would torture test. I try to experiment to find out that this thing is, it's been tested thoroughly. It's going to withstand shipping and in hot climates, whether it be in Sahara Desert or the Arctic. I want to make sure that the customer is going to get a product that doesn't fail.
We'll go with three more student questions, then we'll let you go. So with that product testing, is that how you guys kind of determine how much a product could be sold for or how much it's worth?
That's the market. You sometimes you have to scale down a product. You might have so many, it's like writing software. There's a point where you might say, I can't add more modules or more functions at this point. It's going to be priced too high. So sometimes you have to scale back. I always like to have the premium products. I'm not in a race to the bottom with anything. In the toy industry, it's a little different. You want to provide safety, value, play value, but it all has to be at such a low cost because the toy industry is very price sensitive. Parents only have a certain amount to spend. When the selfie stick first came out, we launched it at $19.95 US, and with different accessories, it was the Pro. We called it the Plus. Pro Plus was $29.95, and then we added different versions over time, longer ones, heavier duty. Some had remote controls built in. Some had rechargeable lithium ion batteries in the handles that could power up smartphones and GoPros, etc. So you do line extensions once you know or feel you have a market that's growing.
That's so intriguing. And we have a question from Mav, and she is in Italy. Mav, you should be able to unmute and ask Wayne your question.
Hi, just what do you draw our inspiration and how do you look to reality news to find solutions?
Okay, so Ralph, the first part I got, where do I draw the inspiration? What was the last part?
Yeah, how do you like the world? Do you use the world around you to draw for inspiration?
Yeah. I'm a voracious reader. I love reading, so I read everything from technical magazines to paid subscriptions. I just love to read and absorb. And whenever I travel, I scan stores. I know everything that I've ever seen. If I'm in Switzerland or Geneva, wherever I am, if I see something, I know exactly what it is, where I saw it, what it does, and that way, when I do have some kind of idea, and the ideas are generally items or products that I think I would enjoy, that's really my test. I'm not, unless somebody specifically comes to me and said, hey, can you create something to solve this problem? Otherwise, I just think, as especially in the toy industry, I think as a kid would think. And I remember what my life was like as a child, and I think I can still relate to play things that are fun. But absolutely, we came up with a product years back. It was a toy called Crazy Bones, and it was based on an old toy from Greece thousands of years ago. And it was called astragalus in the original. There used to be sheep knuckle bones that the kids would paint and throw and bounce. And so we had a modern day version of that. So sure, you draw from history, you draw from other countries. Everything's fair game.
That's incredible. So we have one more student question. This is from Baran. Baran, go ahead and unmute and ask. You had a pretty good question.
Hi, I just wanted to know how is it to be an inventor nowadays, and also how do you process to invent new useful tools?
Okay, so the first part, what is it like? I think she means in the age, because we're in the age of cognition, metacognition, because ideas grow rapidly because of the internet and cell phones.
Yes.
What is that like being an inventor in that age?
That's a good question. I can only relate to the physical world, not so much, AI and virtual. I think, again, I have to go back to my area of interest, which is mainly toy. And I know that the selfie stick is it's outside of toy, but it's still kind of family related. I think kids are still going to like tactile inventions. So my mind is still focused on things that can be touched and exist in the real world. There's certainly incredible opportunities for people in meta. It's a whole different way of thinking, and I pass my the torch to them, and looking forward to seeing what they come up with.
That's great. That's absolutely great. And we can't thank you enough for being with us today. For everyone who's on here, we have a few more inventors coming up over the next 2 weeks. Tomorrow we have the inventor of the cell phone. So definitely connect with us. So Wayne, before we let you go, before I end this meeting for all, I'm going to allow everyone to unmute to say thank you. So I want to say thank you from the bottom of my heart for taking time out of your very busy schedule. We can't wait to see what new inventions you have coming up in the next few years. Definitely check it out. So thank you.
Thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Bye.